Hey everybody, what's up? My name is Doug, and this is another in my video series in collaboration with the Captician, talking about how to take care of your caps. And today I wanted to talk to you about the visor of the cap and taking proper care of that. Now, for the duration of this video, you will probably hear me refer to this as the visor. However, I would recognize that many of you might refer to this as the brim or bill of the cap, sometimes even the peak of the cap. But for my discussion, I'm going to pretty much call it visor from here on out. Now, before I get into any specifics, I just wanted to share the fundamental rule of visor care. That is, don't get it all the way wet, soaked through, submerged in water, etc. It just signals more trouble later on. And this comes from the fact that a lot of the old vintage caps used to use cardboard, and we'll talk about that in a minute, along with other visor materials. Modern materials tend to be a little bit more water resistant, waterproof, if you will, but it's best to follow the rule not to soak that visor because there's just too many downsides for doing that. So we recommend avoiding getting the visor completely wet. Now, there are times where either if you're cleaning the visor or you're steam shaping it, that it's going to get a little bit of moisture exposure because you've got to clean the fabric and or expose it to the moisture in the steam to curve it. That's okay, but what we're just trying to get you to avoid is just soaking that all the way through, because usually that has some pretty bad outcomes regardless of material. All right, so on the topic of materials, let's run through a few of the common ones. So as I mentioned earlier, cardboard was a long time ingredient as a visor material. Sometimes it's referred to as paperboard, but it's basically what you'd expect, a flat compressed cardboard that was stitched into the fabric and basically gave the visor its physical shape. Now, what's far more common today is usually a plastic visor, and that is usually a high-density polyethylene, or sometimes abbreviated HDPE visor, and that's just a flat sheet that's die cut into the shape of the visor, and you can see the stitching patterns around the front of the visor following the curve, which adhere the fabric to the plastic substrate. Now, there are a lot of commodity plastics that can also be foamed, and usually this is done when you can put a little bit of air into the material to create a foam rather than filling it with pure plastic. So that's sometimes a cost saving move. And so there are some foamed plastic visors out there, but make no mistake, they're still plastic, and chances are it's probably still a foamed HDPE or something similar to that. And then the last major category is actually quite large because it's the one favored by New Era, and that's what I refer to as a resin fiber blend, or basically it's a mix of plastic and cardboard, and that provides the best properties of both because you've got the fiber in there, which gives it a little bit more softness and flexibility and what I would call shape memory, but it also has the toughness and durability that you get from a plastic visor. So this has been used commonly in New Era's caps, and it has been that way probably for 20 plus years. They've utilized this same visor material. And as mentioned a little bit earlier, although most vintage caps and caps from an earlier time period may have used cardboard, any reissues or heritage reproductions of prior historical caps are almost always using plastic these days for the benefits of durability over time. So now that we know about the materials, how can you really tell what's in your visor on an average cap that you pull out of your collection? Well, I'd say there's a couple of paths that you can go down, and the first one starts with the feel of the visor, of course. So you really just want to give it a little flex and see how it reacts. If it's plastic, it's going to spring back fairly quickly to any flexing movements and things like that. If it's cardboard, it's going to give a lot quicker and probably not be so resilient in springing back, of course. Now, the second thing that you can look for is really what I refer to as the shape memory of the material. I have found that plastic visors, you really need to keep flexing those, such as before you want to wear a cap that day. If you want to get a fresh curve on that, sometimes you have to freshen a little bit by flexing just a little bit more from the one that you might have steam shaped in. So plastic tends to lose its shape over time, and it definitely loses it faster than the plastic fiber blend, so the plastic cardboard mix. And on that note, if and when you steam bend your visor to get that curve that you want, which is always the process that I recommend, you will find that the plastic fiber blend really retains that shape a lot better. It responds to the heat, it relaxes the material, and then because it's got the fiber, it is more likely to retain that shape rather than just a pure plastic one, which is always trying to spring back to its flat condition. Now, you can also tell by brand, because as mentioned, New Era has been using the plastic and fiber blend for 20 plus years. And it's also pretty straightforward to see that 47 brand uses almost all plastic visors in their caps. Now, with a vintage manufacturer like Ebbetsfield Flannels, they've got a number of them that use a plastic visor. So that's the one part of the construction that it isn't true vintage in that they're not using cardboard. However, they do have some soft visors on a few of their caps, and it's called out on the description page for each cap. So I'll just give you a quick demo with 3 different samples of those 3 brands, and you can take a look at them here. Standard New Era cardboard and plastic blend. It also does not spring back as forcefully as plastic does. I find that I do not need to steam this visor quite as long as I would a plastic visor. 47 brand, plastic visor. Sharp report when you tap on it. Will spring back a little bit more forcefully when you try and flex it. The pure plastic visors have a higher softening temperature, so I typically leave them in the steam just a few seconds longer than a standard New Era cap. Ebbetsfield Flannels with a plastic visor gives again that sharper, crisp sound when you tap it. It'll retain a shape. I recommend steam bending for this, but it does tend to want to find its flat shape again faster than the cardboard plastic blends that you find in New Era caps. Ebbetsfield Flannels cap with a completely soft visor. Just a dull sound. This is completely soft, and you can tell how easy this is to flex and move around however you like. When it comes to caring for the visor, if you are a person that wants to curve your visor, I always recommend steam bending the visor. And I'll put a link up in the corner here where you can see my standard tutorial for 3 different ways to steam bend your visor. When the material is warm and pliable, you're avoiding creating small or large cracks in the material when you bend it. If you do a lot of what I call cold bending of the visor, it can actually fatigue it and create a lot of those cracks. So over time, it will lose its stiffness and its ability to hold shape, which is probably pretty important to you if you're someone who likes to wear a curved visor. As mentioned before, you do not want to soak or submerge the visor, even if you know for sure it's all plastic, if it's waterproof, or especially if you've got a plastic fiber blend. It's just not something you do because it can still distort the shape. It can distort the fabric around it, and with all that stitching, it can actually change the shape of the visor or the performance of the visor. So not recommended at all. Now, because the visor is at the very front of the cap and because it's in a horizontal position, it can also be very vulnerable to spills or other debris. It's okay to consider using a fabric protectant on the visor. When I say this, I'm thinking about something like Scotchgard, which is made by 3M, and it's been long a universal fabric protector, and it makes cleaning easier. But certainly there's other options out there, maybe the waterproofing sprays or the protectants that you see in shoe stores for suede or canvas shoes, for example. Now, I would also say that simple brushing with a cap brush is the best way to routinely keep your visor clean. So do the top side, the bottom side, and particularly the crevice between the visor and the crown of the cap. That tends to be a magnet for dirt and debris. So that's a good spot to hit rather frequently, and that really keeps your caps looking fresh. And then lastly, storage in a safe place is really essential, whether it's in a bin, a cap carrier, up on a closet shelf away from dust, things like that. It's common sense, but storing your caps properly also goes a long way towards protecting the visor. All right, so there you have it. Hopefully you got something out of that, and this is part of a video series that I'm doing in collaboration with the Captician. It's all about cleaning and maintaining your caps. And if you are interested in buying a cleaning kit from the Captician or other cleaning supplies, you can scroll down and find links in the description below this video to get you where you need to be. Other than that, as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.